Okay. I had it fucking
Here's a compiled list of all the beta storyline stories you've had me create so far, in the order they were introduced or numbered. Hash beta storyline stories, so far. 1. Will number 0. Introduces Will. Here's Strange Stories number 1, written as a medium-length, multi-part story for the beta storyline. Strange Stories number 1, beta store at 1. Aiko, the Japanese warrior. In the misty valleys of Japan, the sun rose over a quiet village, but peace was a fleeting thing. Rogue samurai, dishonored men who had abandoned their codes, terrorized the surrounding countryside, looting farms and threatening innocent villagers. Aiko, a female warrior of exceptional skill, silently tracked the group through bamboo forests. Her training was unparalleled. She moved like water, her blade reflecting the faint morning light. She didn't seek glory, only justice. When the rogue samurai attacked a merchant caravan, Aiko intervened. With precise strikes, she disarmed her foes one by one, using their own momentum against them. Her movements were fluid, almost artistic, an unstoppable combination of strategy, speed, and experience. By the time the villagers dared to step outside their homes, the rogue samurai were defeated, either incapacitated or fleeing in fear of Aiko's wrath. Her presence was brief, like a shadow passing through the land, but the message was clear. Those who broke the code would face consequences. The villagers whispered her name with reverence. Aiko, Guardian of Justice. Part 2. The Root King protects nature. Far from civilization, deep in the heart of an ancient forest, a disturbance stirred the trees. Lumberjacks and loggers had ventured too far, felling sacred trees for profit. The Root King, a massive sentient tree creature, rose from the forest floor. Vines whipped like whips, roots erupted from the earth, and his bark-hardened limbs struck with unstoppable force. He was the living guardian of the forest, older than the cities, older than the humans themselves. When a bulldozer approached, the Root King uprooted the ground, sending it crashing against machinery. Timber fell, and the workers fled, terrified by a being they could hardly comprehend. Animals and plants seemed to move in tandem with him, a living forest army. The Root King's mission was simple: protect life, punish greed. By sunset, the forest was safe once more. Those who tried to harm it would think twice before returning, and the Root King returned to his silent vigil, a sentinel unseen by most. Part 3, Roland Vance. The detective, back in the city, Roland Vance, a seasoned private investigator, sat in his office, surrounded by yellowed case files and cryptic letters. His latest investigation led him to a shadowy cult operating in the outskirts of the city, one rumored to engage in dark rituals and manipulation of influential figures. Roland's instincts told him something more dangerous lurked beneath the surface. This wasn't just about cults and superstition. Strange disappearances, missing persons, and whispered rumors all connected to the same sinister group. As he dug deeper, he discovered symbols linking the cult to an ancient entity, hinting at powers beyond human comprehension. Night after night, Roland trailed leads, confronted cultists, and pieced together the organization's structure. He was meticulous, refusing to jump to conclusions, but the closer he got, the more dangerous his work became. Every door he opened seemed to reveal more darkness, and yet he pressed on. Because in a world filled with strange powers, corruption, and violence, Roland Vance was the man who asked the questions no one else dared to ask. Story summary. Part 1. Aiko protects a village from rogue samurai, showcasing her mastery and honor. Part 2. Root King defends the forest, emphasizing nature's power and sentience. Part 3. Roland Vance investigates a cult tied to dark ancient forces, hinting at supernatural threats in the city. This issue establishes multiple corners of your universe: mystical warriors, elemental guardians, and grounded. Here's the full long-form story for your request. Robin Hood number 1, Silas Woodrow had always known that skill alone was not enough to survive in a world where power and greed ruled the streets. Long before he became the vigilante known as Robin Hood, he traveled across the globe to train under Master Kenji Takahara, a legendary martial artist whose discipline and philosophy shaped the greatest warriors of the modern age. The dojo in the mountains was austere, the air crisp, and the mornings began before dawn. Silas learned patience, precision, and the deadly art of archery combined with hand-to-hand combat. He was pushed to his limits, mastering acrobatics, stealth, and strategic thinking. Master Takahara's teachings were strict. Every movement had purpose, every strike had consequence, and every arrow that left the bow must find its mark. Silas absorbed it all, dedicating himself to the principles of justice, discipline, and protecting those who could not protect themselves. Years later, in present-day Evergreen City, Silas walked through the streets as a man of business, maintaining the public face of Woodrow Industries, but he never truly left the lessons of Takahara behind. News of corruption and crime had reached his ears, and he could not stand idly by. That night, he read reports of Count Alexander Varelli, known as Vertaxis, a corrupt aristocrat and drug dealer whose influence extended across the city's elite. Silas knew he had to act. Slipping into his vigilante persona, he donned his hood, drew his custom bow, and moved through the shadows with the quiet grace that had been honed through years of training. Vertaxis was attending a gala, surrounded by bodyguards and wealthy patrons oblivious to his criminal activities. Silas perched on a rooftop, calculating distances, angles, and timing. With a single exhalation, he let the first arrow fly, striking the lock of a nearby security door, allowing him to infiltrate the building unseen. Guards moved in response to the noise, but Robin Hood was faster. Using a combination of martial arts and carefully aimed trick arrows, he incapacitated each threat silently. Vertaxis, realizing something was amiss, tried to flee, but Silas anticipated his movements, sending a grappling arrow to pin the villain to a wall. Vertaxis struggled, but the vigilante was methodical. His training with Master Takahara had taught him that the battle was as much mental as it was physical. Vertaxis was captured without a single innocent harmed. No time was wasted. Silas knew that Vertaxis was only part of a larger plan orchestrated by Roman Vale, the man known as the Sovereign. Intelligence had reached him that Quick Shade, the deadly assassin Adrian Velez, was working with Vale's operatives to eliminate Evergreen City's mayor during a public appearance. Silas moved swiftly, tracking the assassin's path through the city streets. Quickshade was precise, deadly, and elusive, a former mercenary whose reputation rivaled Silas's own skill set. As the mayor's convoy approached, Silas dropped from the shadows onto the roof of a nearby building, using his acrobatics to gain an advantage over the assassin's team. Quickshade's men were armed and ready, but Silas had anticipated every step. With pinpoint arrows and rapid martial strikes, he neutralized each operative, incapacitating them without fatalities. Quickshade, realizing the interference, drew twin blades and engaged Silas directly. The two moved with incredible speed and precision, each attack countered, each movement calculated. Silas used the environment to his advantage, flipping off walls and swinging from rooftops, forcing Quickshade to overextend. A final arrow, shot with perfect timing, disarmed the assassin and pinned his blade to the wall. Silas leapt down, restraining Quickshade and signaling the Evergreen City Police. By dawn, the streets were secure. Count Vertaxis, Quickshade, and all the mercenaries linked to Roman Vale were arrested by the police. Silas watched from the shadows, his work done for the night. He knew the city would never be free of crime entirely, but he also knew that as long as he followed the path taught by Master Takahara, he could protect those who could not protect themselves, one arrow at a time. This is the long story format as you requested. Continuous narrative, no cuts, panels, scenes, or chapters, fully part of the beta storyline. If you want, I can continue and write Robin Hood 2, showing his next major encounter and building his connections with Velocity and Nightwolf. Do you want me to do that next? Here's a full Nightwolf Memories story for the Beta storyline, written as one continuous narrative. Nightwolf Memories. Nightwolf sat in the dimly lit study of the Jackson estate, his armored suit discarded on the stand nearby. The city outside hummed quietly, unaware of the predators and criminals he hunted in the shadows. His mind, however, was anything but quiet. He thought back over his cases, years of blood, deception, and justice, focusing on the rogues who had tested him most. Lorenzo Vitale, the Purple Man, once a kingpin of the streets, had ruled Jackson City through fear. Nightwolf remembered the chemical attack that left him horribly injured and hospitalized, and how the streets had slowly returned to a fragile peace. Then there was Red Helmet, a violent criminal with a penchant for chaos. The memory of him falling into chemicals at Blackwood Plant lingered like a dark stain. He recalled Dominic Falconer Struthers, Ostrich, the bizarre, dangerous villain who took his themed crime seriously, and Victor Cade, the calculating Red Mask, always one step ahead with psychological tactics. Vivian Locke, Foxwoman, agile and devious, had been a challenge both physically and mentally. Marcus Matthews, the Shadow Man, had tested him against darkness itself, while Darius Kane, Volt, had turned tragedy into vengeance, a living storm of electricity. Mad Jack's chaos had been personal, Daydog's persistence almost comical, and the octopus's obsession with the number 8, a strange but deadly game. Shockwave's power had sent him reeling more than once. Pigeon's gliding made him a tricky opponent, and Scorpion's toxins were a constant reminder of mortality. Malcolm Pierce, Nightjack, had pushed him to outthink a master thief, while Quick Shade, Red Mist, and the Brain had forced him to test every skill he had learned. Scar, the serial killer, had left scars of his own on Nightwolf's memory, reminders that not all evil wore a mask. After hours of replaying these memories, he finally stood and walked over to the small table where Bruce Parker, his loyal butler, was waiting. "It's never easy, is it?" Bruce asked quietly. Nightwolf nodded, pulling out a few old photographs, his parents, Matthew and Martha Jackson, and his brother, whose name he still remembered only in fragments. The pain of their loss was as sharp as ever, a constant shadow behind his mask. He also reflected on his training with Raheem Al-Zafir and the lessons in combat and strategy that had forged him. Layla Al-Zafir's guidance in agility and stealth had been invaluable, and he couldn't help but recall the complicated, unspoken bond he'd shared with her during that time. The next morning, Nightwolf returned to his life as Max Jackson. In his office, he met with Adrian Jekyll, his best friend, and the city's district attorney. Their discussion ranged from corporate matters to the latest legal cases, but the shadow of Nightwolf always lingered over his thoughts. Later that night, as he once again donned his armor, the memory of Commissioner Theodore Granger came unbidden. Those years ago, when Nightwolf had been unable to save the man who had quietly supported his vigilantism, whose life had been lost despite all efforts. The guilt weighed heavily. Trying to shake off the darkness, he turned to the newsfeed. Grant Mercer and Grace reported on a recent arrest, a bank robbery foiled by Detective Raymond Ray Kessler and Commissioner Daniel Mercer. Seeing the criminals led away in cuffs, Nightwolf allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction. Justice, at least for now, had been served. Yet even as he watched, he knew the city's shadows were never truly empty, and that he, Nightwolf, would always be ready. Characters appearing: Max Jackson, Nightwolf; Lorenzo Vitale's Purple Man, Red Helmet; Dominic Falconer Struthers, Ostrich; Victor Cade, Red Mask; Vivian Locke, Foxwoman; Marcus Matthews, Shadow Man, Midnight Man; Darius Kane, Volt; Mad Jack, Daydog, the Octopus, Shockwave; Pigeon, Scorpion; Malcolm Pierce, Nightjack; Quick Shade, Red Mist; The Brain, Scar; Bruce Parker, Butler; Matthew and Martha Jackson, Family Photos; Raheem Al-Zafir, Trainer; Layla Al-Zafir, Trainer, Past Relationship; Adrian Jekyll, Best Friend, District Attorney; Commissioner Theodore Granger, Past Memory; Grant Mercer and Grace, Reporters; Detective Raymond Ray Kessler and Commissioner Daniel Mercer. Here's your Nightwolf Memories number 2, written in the same long, continuous style. Nightwolf Memories number 2. The night in Jackson City was colder than usual, the kind of cold that settled deep into the bones and made the streets feel emptier than they really were. But Nightwolf knew better. The city was never empty. It was alive with crime, with whispers, with deals being made in the dark. Tonight, those whispers all led back to two names that had shaped the underworld long before masks and metahumans took over. Luciano Moretti, known as the Roman, and Marco DeLuca. Though their empires had weakened over time, their influence still lingered, spreading through crews, enforcers, and loyalists who refused to let the old ways die. Nightwolf had spent weeks tracking shipments, intercepted communications, and patterns in the movement of money and weapons. Everything pointed to a coordinated resurgence, an attempt to reclaim power in a city that had moved on from traditional crime into something far more dangerous. Perched high above the docks, Nightwolf observed a group of men unloading crates from a cargo truck. The markings were subtle, but he recognized them, coded symbols tied to Moretti's old network. Across town, another group linked to DeLuca had been spotted moving weapons into abandoned buildings. It wasn't coincidence. It was organization. Without hesitation, Nightwolf moved. Dropping silently from the rooftop, he landed behind the first group. Before they could react, he struck, precise, efficient, controlled. One by one, the enforcers fell, disarmed and restrained before they could even draw their weapons. His suit's systems mapped every movement, every threat, every escape route, but his instincts guided him more than anything else. Years of training and experience had turned him into something more than human in the dark. One of the men tried to flee, reaching for a hidden radio, but Nightwolf intercepted him, pinning him against the truck. "Who's running this?" he demanded. The man hesitated, fear in his eyes, before muttering about shipments, about orders coming from higher up, about the Roman's name still carrying weight, even if the man himself was gone from the streets. Nightwolf didn't waste time. He secured the group and sent an anonymous tip to the police before disappearing into the shadows again. Across the city, in a crumbling warehouse district, DeLuca's men were preparing for a deal. Weapons lined the tables, and tension filled the air. They thought they were alone. They were wrong. The lights went out. Panic spread instantly, but Nightwolf thrived in darkness. Using his suit's night vision, he moved through the chaos like a phantom. A flash of movement, a strike, another takedown. Each man fell before he could even understand what was happening. Gunshots rang out blindly, but none found their target. Within minutes, the entire operation was dismantled. One of DeLuca's lieutenants tried to stand his ground, firing wildly, shouting about reclaiming the city, about restoring order the old way. Nightwolf disarmed him with a single calculated move, knocking the weapon aside and bringing him to the ground. "The city doesn't belong to you anymore," Nightwolf said coldly. "It never did." As the final man was restrained, Nightwolf stepped back, surveying the scene. Another anonymous call was placed, another operation ready to be cleaned up by the authorities. By the time the police arrived, the criminals were already tied up, their plans in ruins. The names of Moretti and DeLuca still carried history, but their grip on the present was slipping further with every passing night. From a nearby rooftop, Nightwolf watched the flashing lights below. This wasn't about glory or recognition. It was about control, keeping the city from falling back into the hands of men who saw it as nothing more than territory to conquer. The war for Jackson City had changed, but the mission remained the same. And Nightwolf was still hunting. If you want next, I can write Nightwolf Memories number 3, where he starts targeting new era crime bosses or meta-human gangs, showing the transition from old mafia to modern villains. Here's Nightwolf Memories number 3, written in your long, continuous format. Nightwolf Memories number 3. The deeper Nightwolf dug into Jackson City's underworld, the more he realized that the old mob empires were only part of the problem. The real danger had evolved, hidden behind wealth, influence, and technology. One name kept resurfacing in encrypted files, black market transactions, and whispered conversations among criminals who were too afraid to say it out loud. Victor Halden. Halden wasn't like Moretti or DeLuca. He didn't rely on street thugs or fear alone. He operated from the top of the world, corporate towers, private labs, and heavily guarded facilities. His company, Halden Biodyne Systems, was supposed to be advancing science and medicine, but Nightwolf knew the truth. Beneath the surface, Halden was funding illegal experiments, creating weapons, and hiring mercenaries to protect it all. Tonight, Nightwolf had a lead. A convoy tied to Halden's operations was moving through an industrial sector on the outskirts of the city. Satellite scans from his systems showed unusual energy signatures, technology far beyond standard weapons. Whatever Halden was transporting, it wasn't meant to be seen. From the shadows of a nearby rooftop, Nightwolf observed the convoy. Armed guards surrounded reinforced vehicles, their gear more advanced than anything the average criminal could afford. These weren't street-level enforcers. These were trained professionals, loyal to Halden's money and power. Nightwolf moved without hesitation. Dropping silently onto the last vehicle, he planted a device that disabled its communications before slipping into the darkness below. One guard turned, sensing movement, but it was already too late. Nightwolf struck with precision, taking him down before he could alert the others. The convoy halted as confusion spread among the guards. Orders were shouted, weapons raised, but they couldn't see their enemy. Nightwolf used that fear, that uncertainty. He moved between them, striking fast, disarming one, incapacitating another, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. A guard fired a high-powered energy weapon, the blast tearing through a wall behind him. Nightwolf analyzed it instantly. Experimental tech, likely developed through Halden's secret research. Dangerous, unstable, and not meant for public use. He adapted quickly, using smoke pellets and EMP bursts from his suit to disrupt the weapons and level the field. Within minutes, the convoy's defenses began to collapse. One by one, the mercenaries fell, restrained and unable to continue the fight. But Nightwolf wasn't finished. He moved to the lead vehicle and forced it open, revealing crates filled with advanced technology, prototype weapons, experimental devices, and materials that could only mean one thing. Halden was preparing for something bigger. One of the remaining guards, clearly a commander, tried to escape with a data drive. Nightwolf intercepted him, slamming him against the vehicle. "What is Halden planning?" Nightwolf demanded. The man hesitated, then smirked despite the situation. "You're already too late," he said. "This is just the beginning." Nightwolf secured the drive and knocked the man unconscious. He knew better than to take empty threats lightly. Halden wasn't just moving weapons. He was building something that could change the balance of power in the city, maybe even beyond it. As always, Nightwolf left an anonymous tip for the authorities, ensuring the police would arrive to collect the evidence and arrest the remaining operatives. By the time the sirens echoed through the industrial district, he was already gone, watching from above as the scene unfolded. The flashing lights illuminated the captured mercenaries and the seized technology, but Nightwolf's focus was elsewhere. He held the data drive in his hand, knowing it contained answers, and likely more questions. Victor Halden wasn't just another enemy. He was a different kind of threat entirely. And this war was far from over. If you want, I can write Nightwolf Memories number 4. Here's your Jackson City Police video, written as a continuous in-universe piece for the beta storyline. Jackson City Police Training Video. This training program is part of the beta storyline, part 1 of part 4 of Saga 1. The screen flickers to life with the official seal of the Jackson City Police Department. A calm but authoritative voice begins speaking as footage of the city's skyline appears, transitioning into scenes of officers in action. Welcome to the Jackson City Police Department training program. This video is required viewing for all new recruits and active officers. Jackson City is not an ordinary city. Criminal activity here ranges from organized crime to highly dangerous meta-human threats. Your training must reflect that reality. The footage shifts to Commissioner Theodore Granger standing at a podium from an earlier recorded address. Discipline, awareness, and teamwork are your greatest assets. You will face enemies that cannot always be handled with standard procedure. You must adapt. The video cuts to a tactical training room where Lieutenant Daniel Mercer oversees recruits running drills. Officers practice coordinated movements, clearing rooms, and responding to simulated threats. Stay sharp, Mercer shouts. You hesitate, you lose control of the situation. Next, Detective Raymond Ray Kessler appears in an interrogation room, speaking directly to the camera. Most of your work won't be flashy. It'll be long nights, paperwork, and piecing together evidence. But when the time comes, you'll need to act fast. Criminals in this city don't wait, and neither can you. The screen transitions to real case footage. Blurred clips show arrests of organized crime members tied to figures like Luciano Moretti and Marco DeLuca. Organized crime remains a persistent threat, the narrator explains. Even weakened, these networks still operate through smaller crews and loyalists. Officers are expected to identify patterns, track movements, and coordinate with task forces when necessary. The tone shifts as darker footage appears. Damaged streets, scorched buildings, and evidence markers scattered across crime scenes. Metahuman threats present a unique danger. Individuals such as Darius Kane, known as Volt, and Marcus Matthews, known as Shadow Man, have demonstrated abilities beyond conventional limits. Direct engagement is not recommended without proper support. A new segment begins, labeled Vigilante Interaction Protocol. Grainy footage of Nightwolf moving through the shadows appears. Jackson City is home to at least one known vigilante operating outside the law. While their actions have resulted in the apprehension of multiple high-profile criminals, officers are reminded that vigilantism is not officially sanctioned. Maintain distance, do not interfere unless necessary, and prioritize civilian safety at all times. The video briefly shows clips of arrests involving villains like Victor Cade, Red Mask, Vivian Locke, Foxwoman, and Malcolm Pierce Nightjack being taken into custody. Officers are seen securing rewrites and coordinating with backup. The next section focuses on teamwork. Commissioner Daniel Mercer appears in a modern-day briefing room. No officer operates alone. Whether you're responding to a robbery or a metahuman incident, coordination is key. Trust your fellow officers, trust your training, and remember why you're here. The footage transitions to Grant Mercer and Grace reporting on a recent successful police operation. Thanks to coordinated efforts by the JCPD, Grant says, multiple suspects involved in a bank robbery have been apprehended. Grace continues, officials credit Detective Raymond Kessler and Commissioner Daniel Mercer for leading the operation. The video pauses briefly on the image of officers standing together, unified. The narrator returns. Public perception matters. The people of Jackson City rely on you to maintain order in a world that is becoming increasingly unpredictable. Your actions represent the department and, more importantly, the safety of the city. The final segment shows recruits standing in formation as the sun rises over the city. Commissioner Granger's voice plays one last time from archival footage. This job will test you. It will push you further than you think you can go. But if you stand your ground, if you do what's right, you will make a difference. The screen fades to black. Text appears, Jackson City Police Department, serve, protect, endure. If you want, I can also create a JCPD field manual. Here's your Nightwolf Mysteries number 0 in the short issue 0 format, continuous and part of the beta storyline. Nightwolf Mysteries number 0. This is part of the beta storyline, part 1 of part 4 of Saga 1. The rain fell steadily over Jackson City, masking sound and movement, but not enough to hide what Nightwolf was tracking. For weeks, whispers had spread through the criminal underground about a figure known only as the Silencer, a killer who left no witnesses, no noise, and almost no evidence. Entire operations had gone dark overnight, crime bosses losing men without understanding how or why. Nightwolf stood on a rooftop overlooking an abandoned industrial block, his suit scanning for movement. Thermal readings flickered briefly, then vanished. That was the first sign. Whoever the Silencer was, he knew how to avoid detection. Nightwolf moved carefully, dropping into the alley below, his senses sharpened, every sound analyzed, every shadow watched. A faint metallic click echoed behind him, barely audible, but it was enough. He turned just as a suppressed shot cut through the air, grazing his shoulder. The Silencer stepped from the darkness, masked, cloaked, moving with unnatural precision. No wasted motion, no hesitation. He fired again, forcing Nightwolf to take cover. This wasn't a random assassin. This was someone trained to eliminate targets efficiently, someone who studied patterns and exploited weaknesses. Nightwolf adapted quickly. He deployed smoke from his suit, disrupting visibility, then shifted positions silently. The silencer fired into the smoke, predicting movement, but Nightwolf was already behind him. The two clashed in close combat. Fast, brutal, calculated. Every strike from the silencer was meant to end the fight instantly, but Nightwolf countered with discipline and control. The fight moved through the warehouse, metal clashing against reinforced armor, shadows shifting with every movement. The silencer tried to create distance, using gadgets and suppressed weapons, but Nightwolf closed the gap again and again, refusing to let the assassin dictate the pace. Finally, Nightwolf saw the opening. A precise strike disarmed the silencer, followed by a takedown that sent him crashing to the ground. Before the assassin could recover, Nightwolf restrained him, locking his arms and disabling his equipment. For a moment, the two stared at each other in silence. The silencer said nothing. He didn't plead, didn't threaten, just watched. Nightwolf activated his comm and sent an anonymous tip to the authorities. Within minutes, distant sirens began to echo through the streets. As the police closed in, Nightwolf disappeared back into the shadows, leaving the silencer bound and exposed. Another threat removed, another mystery solved. But something about this one lingered. The precision, the planning. This wasn't the work of a lone assassin. Somewhere in the city, someone had created the silencer, and Nightwolf knew this was only the beginning. If you want, I can continue with Nightwolf Mysteries #1, where Nightwolf investigates who created the silencer, possibly tying it to Victor Halden or another larger villain in the beta storyline.
We're getting rid of all of them. We can't use none.
Yeah, Mama said so.
Yeah, oh.